Welcome to this new FanFiction audiobook. This is my third attempt at making and producing an audiobook that can be immersive in more ways than just the story's narrative. A lot of work, a lot of hours have gone into this story, so I hope you all will perhaps like the video, subscribe and comment your thoughts. Obviously, you are not obligated in doing anything, but I would appreciate it. Now I will welcome you to this story bearing the name The Heir to Slytherin, which beginning takes place in the year of 1888. The wind howled through the dark, stormy summer night, rain lashing against the earth as thunder rumbled in the distance. Above, the full moon hung large and luminous, occasionally peeking through breaks in the dark, stormy clouds. With a sudden cry, a young woman appeared out of thin air at the edge of a sprawling, old yet elegant manor. She looked to be in her late 20s, her coal-black hair whipping the wind, and her emerald green eyes gleaming with sharp alertness. Her long black robes, detailed with intricate golden embroidery, glistened with rain. A golden badge shaped like an M adorned her chest, catching the dim light. The woman paused for a second, scanning the grounds with a practiced gaze before striding toward the grand entrance. The manor's towering front doors loomed before her as she knocked firmly upon the doors. They creak open almost instantly, revealing an elderly man dressed in a finely tailored black suit. Without hesitation, she stepped inside and the doors shut swiftly behind her with a resonant thud. As the woman entered the grand foyer, her footsteps echoed against the polished marble floor, reverberating in the cavernous space. The elderly man, whose face was lined and marked by years of quiet and loyal service, gestured down a long, wide and dimly lit corridor. When he spoke, his voice was low, steady and formal. "It's a great pleasure having you back, Miss Dacre. Your mother has missed you so dearly." Miss Dacre paused for a moment, her emerald eyes flickering with a brief softness at the mention of her mother. But the momentary warmth was swiftly replaced by her usual mask of composure. Inclining her head toward the man, she replied curtly, her voice devoid of any sentiment. "She asked for me." Her gaze shifted, and for the briefest moment, fragments of her childhood memories surfaced. However, she pushed them away as thought they were venom, straightening her posture. "She did indeed, Miss Dacre," the butler replied, unperturbed. "She is waiting for you in her room." He disturbed toward the end of the corridor, his movements precise and practiced. With a quick nod of acknowledgement, Miss Dacre moved toward the indicated door. Her expression remained an unreadable mask. As she entered the room, the flickering light of the fire danced across the elegant space. Her mother, Marie Dacre, sat upright in a high-backed chair, her hands folded neatly in her lap. Her pale complexion seemed almost luminous in the firelight, and her auburn hair, now a bit silver-streaked, had been pulled back into a chignon. Her sharp grey eyes, once piercing, softened the instant they fell upon her daughter. "Nerissa," Marie said warmly, rising to her feet with a grace that defied her years. "You've come." "I did," Nerissa replied, her tone cool and detached. Yet despite the distance in her voice, she stepped forward and allowed herself to be drawn into her mother's embrace, though her posture remained rigid, her arms barely returning the gesture. Marie pulled back, her sharp grey eyes studying her daughter intently, as though seeing more than what was just visible on the surface. "Sit, please. Alfred has prepared us some tea," she said, gesturing toward two armchairs set by the window, their heavy curtains drawn shut. Nerissa complied, taking a seat and picking up the delicate porcelain teacup. The tea tasted just as she remembered, bland and dull, but she sipped it without complaint. "So tell me, dear," Marie began, her tone conversational but laced with something deeper. "How is she?" "She's fine," Nerissa answered curtly, taking another sip of the tasteless tea. "Is it true? Can she speak with animals?" She can, Nerissa confirmed, her voice firm, but only with one kind. Marie's sharp grey eyes narrowed slightly, her expression unreadable as she processed Nerissa's words. She leaned back in her chair, her grip tightening around her teacup. "With snakes," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. Nerissa nodded, setting her cup down on the small table between them. She's shown the ability since she was 6. At first it was accidental, frightened muggles and a few incidents, but now it's undeniable. She's a parcel mouth, like Elisande. The air in the room seemed to grow heavier, the silence broken only by the occasional crackle of the fire. Marie's face remained calm, but her knuckles whitened as she clutched the fragile teacup. "It was always undeniable," she said softly. "She is her mother's daughter after all, a fragment of a bloodline steeped in cruelty, ambition, and wickedness." Her gaze flickered to the fire, her words hanging in the air like a spectre, heavy with an unspoken truth buried for 11 long years. "She's innocent," Nerissa countered, her voice hardening. "She isn't like them, Mother. Accidents happen." Marie's lips pressed into a thin line, her gaze still fixed on the flickering flames. "But what if you can't control her, Nerissa? What if you can't teach her? Her power is as untamable as a predator and just as dangerous. Have you thought of what could happen if she fails to learn? It could be catastrophic. I still lose sleep over what happened 3 years ago." Her voice trailed off, and the silence returned, thick and oppressive. Nerissa's emerald eyes sharpened, her hands curling into fists against her thighs. "I am teaching her," she said, her voice low but resolute, simmering with defiance. "She's learning to control her abilities. Slowly, yes, but she's progressing. What happened 3 years ago was a mistake. A child's fear, confusion, and lack of understanding, not malicious intent. I hope you are right," Marie said quietly, her voice heavy with doubt. "I am right," Nerissa replied, her tone resolute, almost defiant. A silence quickly settled between them once more, stretching uncomfortably. After a long moment, Marie sighed, a weary, heavy sound, laden with more than mere exhaustion. "Henry had another nightmare," she began, her words slow and deliberate. "It's been going on for years now, and it's not getting any better. George always knew how to handle it." Nerissa's jaw tightened, and she gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. The mention of her father stirred a familiar ache, a wound that time had dulled but never healed. George Potter had been an aura, a dedicated protector of the magical world, just as Nerissa was now. But his life had been cut short on a mission shrouded in mystery. No one knew exactly what had happened. Nerissa had spent months, years, searching for answers, chasing whispers and fragments of truth. But every lead had turned to ash. Every inquiry met with silence. The trail was cold, and the weight of the unknown pressed heavily on her shoulders. "The boy is only 6, Nerissa replied, her voice steady but firm, as if trying to reassure both her mother and herself. "He'll recover. Children are resilient." Marie nodded slowly, but her expression betrayed her lingering doubt. Nerissa's words were an attempt to comfort, but it seemed to fall short. "Why haven't you responded to any of my letters, Nerissa?" Marie asked after a pause, her tone soft but laced with quiet hurt. "I've been so worried about you." "I've been busy, Mother," Nerissa replied briskly, a flicker of discomfort crossing her face. "You are always busy," Marie pointed out, her voice tinged with exasperation. "I know your work is demanding, and I know you're bound by your promise, but why carry it all alone? Why burden yourself this way? You are alone, Nerissa." "Because it's my responsibility," Nerissa said, her tone sharpening, though a trace of vulnerability slipped through. "I'm her godmother. It was Elisander's dying wish." "Elisander?" Marie muttered, shaking her head in quiet disbelief. "How much haven't you sacrificed for that girl? She chose to abandon her own daughter, Nerissa, and she left you to pick up the pieces." Her voice was as sharp as a blade, cutting through the air, and Nerissa felt the sting of an old wound being reopened. "She didn't have a choice," Nerissa replied, her voice quieter now, as if trying to convince herself as much as her mother. She bit her lip, the words catching in her throat. They tortured her, Mum. She didn't have a choice. "In my world, there's always a choice," Marie shot back, her tone sharp and unyielding, cutting through Nerissa's defense like a knife. Nerissa's fist clenched at her sides, her jaw tightening as she fought to hold her composure. "You weren't there," she said, her voice trembling with restrained anger. "You didn't see what they did to her. You have no idea what she endured." Marie's sharp gaze bore into her. "And neither do you. You only know the story she told you, a story that conveniently left her blameless. But tell me, Nerissa, how much of the story have you let yourself to believe because it was easier than simply admitting the truth? Why can't you just admit that she failed her own daughter?" "That's enough," Nerissa snapped, her voice rising. "No, it's not," Marie countered, her tone as sharp as ever. "You've sacrificed your life for her mistakes, and you've been doing the same for her child. How much longer can you carry this burden before it breaks you?" Nerissa leans back, the words hitting her like a blow. "You think I don't know what I'm doing?" she shot back. "I've spent every day the last 10 years trying to give that girl the life she deserves, the life Elisande couldn't give her. I will not let you reduce her to her mistakes, and I will not let you dictate how I honor her memory." Marie's face softened for a moment, but it had gone just as quickly, replaced by a mask of cold resolve. "Honor her all you like, Nerissa, but don't mistake sacrifice for redemption. You can't save everyone." Nerissa shook her head, a bitter laugh escaping past her lips. "And that, Mother, is exactly why we'll never see eye to eye. You would have given up on her without a second thought. But I didn't. I won't." Without another word spoken, Nerissa turned on her heel and the teacup fell to the floor, breaking into pieces and the remaining tea spilling all over. Nerissa strode toward the door, her black robes sweeping behind her. "Nerissa!" Marie called after her, but the younger woman didn't stop. Her footsteps echoed through the grand hallway as she reached the door, wrenching it open. Outside, the storm still raged, rain lashing against the manor's stone walls and lightning illuminating the grounds. Nerissa stepped into the chaos without hesitation, the wind tugging at her robes as she disappeared into the night with a sharp crack, the sound of apparition cutting through the storm.